Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
This is episode 164. Welcome to another episode of Let's Be Well Together podcast. Sheila Webster here, and I am joined by Elise Seifert and Michael Seifert, our little 3-month-old grandchild. So you might hear him in the background a little bit. He's playing with his jungle gym. Hopefully he'll be happy.
Hopefully.
So here is an article that I found interesting. How to become more powerful.
Oh, I'd love to know that.
I know. And interestingly enough, these don't really make me think of power.
Okay.
But I do think it makes me think of leadership.
Right.
Right? So how to be more powerful. 1, be calm. 2, talk less. 3, observe more. 4, show respect. 5, move in silence. 6, make eye contact. 7, manage time better. And 8, think before you speak.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah. Be calm.
Very important.
Very important. And do you see what I mean by, I think powerful, for me, these are good leadership qualities.
Yes.
Like I'm thinking as a leader, if I can do all these, then you'll have really good respect, from all your coworkers. But even in relationships, in work environments, I just think these are really great.
I think this reminds me of good leadership that I've had in the past.
Yes.
I think, I've had really good leaders in terms of my workplace who have been really good listeners. And that's what made them such a good leader.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this makes me think of. It reminds me of those really good managers.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I think great leadership skills here. Be calm. Really important when you're trying to deal with customers, but also trying to deal with coworkers as, problem solving. Being calm is really important.
And so hard.
So hard when everyone has their opinions, when there's something that's escalated, and especially with you being a teacher, you probably have a lot of experience with that because parents can get so upset.
So upset. I think the hard times I have is when I have a student who's done the same thing so many times and we've worked on it and worked on it and worked on it and they're continuing to do it. And you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know how to help you anymore. It's so hard to stay calm in that moment. For example, like physical altercations at recess. And you go over it, you go over it, you go over it. And you know that it's an upsetting situation for everyone involved. And you just want it to be solved. And it's just not, that's for me, the hardest time to be calm. But yes, also sometimes, it's really important. Kids are really important to the parents. And when you're dealing with tricky situations with families, it is really important to stay calm and try to listen.
Just listen, right? Because I really feel like whenever I've had to deal with parents in child situations, the parents just want to be heard.
Exactly.
Right? Like because they have the child who comes home and has this, they're very upset. And so the parents just want to be heard and then, stay calm, listen, talk less. That's number 2. So I do think that both of those are so intertwined, but also very important.
So important. And talking less is actually something I had to work on as a teacher. I think as a student, I always thought the teacher's up there, they're talking, and I'm listening. So then once I became a teacher, I, thought that's how it's supposed to be. But as I'm improving in my role, I realize how important it is for me to talk less and have them to talk more and how much more we learn from each other that way. It's amazing.
How funny it is. Oh my gosh.
Especially in kindergarten, those early years, it's great.
Because they have no filter at all. It's just fabulous to hear them. You ask them a question, what you think they're going to say.
Oh, it's not what they're going to say. And I know everything about, if you have a student in kindergarten in my classroom, I know everything about your life.
Yeah.
They tell me
just know
everything.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Observe more. This is really interesting. And as a dancer, right, I observe a lot. That's kind of what my job is as a teacher teaching dance. I'm observing you and your movements and what you're doing and how you're doing it. So I often love to sit back and just observe people and how they behave and what they do. And yeah.
I think that's so important. I do think a lot of leaders that I've had in the past who just kind of sit back and observe, they can really help a lot more than people who just tell you what to do all the time.
For sure. Yeah.
Because you're like, well, you're not even watching. You don't really know what I'm doing or how I'm doing it.
What I'm dealing with.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't really want to listen to you.
Yeah.
But when you know that they're there and they're observing and that they're listening, it just makes you want to be more receptive to those leaders.
I agree.
So I think it helps a lot.
Show respect.
So important.
So important. If you show respect, then you will get respect back.
Exactly.
It's just that easy. Move in silence. Move in silence.
I guess instead of showing off, look at what I'm doing and look how amazing I am at being a leader, you're kind of doing it behind the scenes. And that makes it, I think, more meaningful for people.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. Again, reminds me of a theater when you see the people performing, but everything that's going on backstage, you're moving around and you're doing all this stuff. And that's what makes a show work. Yeah. So moving in silence. I totally get where you're coming from now, that you're doing all the things that needed to be done. Do this, do that, get it done. And then it will just make the whole ship run easier.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I love that example of a show.
Yeah.
I think people don't appreciate what goes on behind the scenes in a show, but it's really important to recognize how amazing those behind the scenes players are.
Yeah. Because I always remember people coming up to me like a week before the show starting going, oh, you must be so nervous, so crazy. Everything's going on. I'm like, oh no, like everything's done now.
Yeah. I've had this plan for months.
All the things that needed to be done are now done. Now it's not up to me. It's up to everybody. We'll see how the show goes. But yeah, there's so many things that need to be done behind the scenes to get it going. So yeah.
It's like being a parent. There are so many things that parents do behind the scenes that I think kids don't even notice or appreciate.
Of course not.
And they just do it in silence and they know that it's so important. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Eye contact, making eye contact.
It is so important. Yeah. It is so important. I just feel so much more connected to people when even in small interactions at the grocery store with the cashier, you just feel more connected to someone when they look at you in the eyes.
I agree. And for me, it's a sign of respect. Like whenever I greet anyone, I look them in the eye and, say hi or, just it's a nice way to make a connection with people, just looking them in the eye. And I feel like almost every time I look someone in the eye, they smile.
It's true. They do. I know. I do have to recognize, though, that it's hard for some people to do that.
Yes.
Some people just can't.
Yeah.
Whether it's something that's ingrained in them biologically or it could be something cultural. Because I know during my time in South Korea, you don't really look at someone in the eyes unless you know that you're kind of in the same social standing as them.
Interesting.
So
Isn't that
students
interesting?
wouldn't look at you in the eye like you. They'd bow. They're very respectful. So I guess it's a different form of respect that is culturally different than what we experience here in Canada.
Yes, that is very interesting. Also, someone said that, so if you're on the autistic spectrum, they don't like looking you in the eye, right? So that is a thing too. Yeah. So, try and look at people in the eye. But if they are not looking at you, there could be reasons, like you're saying, manage time better.
That's a hard one to figure out.
Yeah.
It takes some finagling and some learning.
Yeah. And I definitely do think that this is help you make more powerful or a better leader. You got to have good time management.
Oh, you got to. I think time management changes your game. As a teacher, for me, I'm thinking a lot as a teacher just because that's my kind of leadership experience. But I know when I am well organized and I have things ready to go, it makes such a difference in my classroom management.
Definitely. And it's also a sign of respect, right? Like if you show up late and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I just wasn't, I had to do this and had to do that. It's like, it's bad time management and it's a sign of disrespect and unorganization. And so
that's a great point because as an employee, you think, are you really valuing my time?
Yeah.
I'm here for this meeting. I'm here on time. You're not prepared. And this is taking away from what we need to do as a group. So it's very important to come in and be organized, to show that you have planned for what you need to do.
Exactly. I have you here for a reason, And the last one, think before you speak. And this is something that I've been working on a lot because I tend to just kind of say what's on my mind. So I have been listening. So that's a big one. Listening more and think before I speak. because then it comes out proper. Sometimes it just comes out as a little, and you're like, what?
And it leads to less regrets.
Yes.
Sometimes you say things out of anger or out of any kind of emotion, and then you realize I did not need to say that, and I regret saying that, and I've hurt someone, and then you have to make amends for it when it could have just never happened.
Yeah. And it didn't come out right. That wasn't what I meant, but you already said it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So think before you speak. And then often I think, I don't really have to say that. No, I don't have to make that comment. So,
and then it helps you to realize, where is that feeling or that idea coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And it helps you to look back on yourself and think, okay, that's just coming from my fear, or that's just coming from my anxiety. And I need to work on that myself. And I don't need to put that on someone else.
Mm-hmm. So how to become more powerful. That's the list. But we kind of think it's like how to become a better leader.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. This week's episode is in the category of artistic wellness. And I don't have to read a bio for our guest because it's our very own starving artist, Cameron Earnshaw. Welcome, Cameron.
Howdy, howdy. Happy to be here.
So a couple weeks ago, I disclosed a secret project, which was Cameron and I collaborated and put out a song. And so we just thought it'd be fun to talk about kind of from the art perspective. First of all, how did the song come about? And then how did the kind of vibe come about? But then I was really surprised at some of the technical things you then had to do even after you have a song.
Yeah,
So-
making the song's not even the hardest part, is it?
Well, I guess it depends what you mean by hard. Like, I could never do what you do on the music side. So to me, that's impossible.
Well, we made a good team.
So here's how it all started. It all had to do with actually the podcast and thinking about different areas of wellness, and particularly artistic wellness. I was trying to think of ways to get art into my life more. I do a lot of reading. I like to look at art. I like to listen to music, but I wasn't doing a lot of creative stuff. And I thought, hey, I like writing poems sometimes. Maybe I could write song lyrics. And so then Cameron got an email out of the blue saying, hey, Cameron, I want to do some lyrics. Would you look at them? And what were you thinking?
Well, this is going back a couple of years now.
Yeah.
I remember thinking distinctly they read a lot like poetry, and that even though lyrics and poetry are very similar, there are some differences that need to be remembered and lived up to. Like, you need to make sure that rhyme scheme isn't just A, B, A, B, for example. Meter is very important. But I remember thinking like, yeah, okay, this is kind of cool that John, who, again, as you say, not doing a ton of writing and creativity stuff, out of nowhere says, hey, I got these lyric ideas. Can you give them the once over? I thought that was neat.
When it came to actually the feedback, which was really helpful, it was a bit surprising because what I did was I'd gone off on the internet and kind of looked at how you create songs and what the different schemes are and that kind of stuff. And when you said, well, it's a little too poemy, I'm like, whoa, that kind of threw me. I did change them very significantly. And you probably saw 3, 4, 5 drafts, which, by the way, I don't think you had time to look at the time, but you did anyway, which I appreciate. And, ultimately, I think I did a better job moving it away, but I still, just based on what I'm hearing now, it's still a little poemy versus lyrics, which I still don't fully understand, but I guess I'll just keep thinking and working on that.
Yeah. And I don't think it's like a black and white hard, fast rule to make or to determine whether something is a poem versus song lyrics. And, there's different style and everyone has their own writing style as well. By no means am I an expert. Not to say I have it all myself, but I have had the opportunity to formally study both. And I also went through that development process where I tended to write more like poems, and just being sort of muscled into a different shape in a box by my prof at the time and saying, no, try it like this, do it like this. I see what you're trying to say, but like cut this out. What's a simpler way to say what you're trying to say? And it's just a very different approach. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's a never ending journey to master the craft, right?
I remember you saying that, keep it simpler, say it shorter, which I worked on. I think the other thing that affects me too is I've heard people talk about this a little bit. If you go back, so when I grew up, I was really into music, late 70s, early 80s, into the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
The music was different. Like one thing, for example, I read an article that said way back then, there was a lot more we we're going to do this, we're going to accomplish that, together. And now it's a lot more me. Look at me, I'm really.
That's an interesting. Yeah, I didn't even consider that, but you're thinking about it. You're totally right.
And the other thing was, I think it was a little more storytelling kind of poem-y back in those days compared to now. So probably that was sneaking into the back of my head too, just that experience of what I grew up with.
Absolutely.
That was a lot of fun. And I sent you something that I thought was shortish, but we ended up losing one of the verses.
Yeah.
Which I really like. I really like that verse, but in retrospect, I think it was a great call by you, because now when I listen to the song, by the way, people, we're talking about a song called True North Frame of Mind. We made up the band name Sozame. So if you go to Spotify or wherever you listen to your music, Apple Music, wherever,
it's out there.
You can find it. And there's also kind of a little video version of it on YouTube if you want to have a look. The way it came across now, it works better with those 2 verses in the chorus than the 3. So I do want to talk generally about how you look at words and figure out how that turns into a song. So what was your first blush thoughts? Because I know you came back and said, on one hand, maybe it's more folk. On the other hand, it could be arena rock. What was your thinking there?
Yeah. So the very first read through of what we'll call the final version of your lyrics, when you sent them over, I read it through a couple times and sort of sat on it for a day. And I was really torn between sort of like a Neil Young vibe, because it read not like a story, but sort of on the poem side. When I was jamming it on my guitar and just kind of feeling out different options, it really kept landing in that camp, sort of folky, songwritery. It was cool. But then on the other side of it, just reading through the actual message of the lyrics, I kept having this very vivid mental image of Canada and specifically like hockey, playing hockey.
Yeah, me too.
And, the line, if you drop the gloves, friend, we will too. It's a very hockey line. And so I started to play with it in this context of like, imagine this in a hockey arena. Imagine this is the song playing when the players take the ice, for example, or before a puck drop, and the energy that goes with that. And then I started playing with that. And I was really torn between the two. So I eventually came back to you, John, and I kind of said, look, this is what I'm dealing with. What do you think? And it was your executive decision there. Like, go for the energy one, go for the rock vibe. Let's see what comes out of that. So we ran with that, and that's what came out.
So interesting. I almost want you to go back and do the other one. I was working yesterday on those boring receipts and stuff, but I had music playing in the background.
Yeah.
And Neil Young's Hey, Hey, My came on, and I just cranked it and I was singing along with it. Neil Young is magical to me because he just does, to me, he's relatively unique in terms of the music he puts out.
I agree.
And even though he doesn't have kind of the most melodic, perfect voice, it's an amazing voice. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it perfectly suits what he sings about and how he conveys it. Absolutely.
So then I remember I was hassling you because I'm like, oh man, we gotta move on this because things are happening fast. Again, for people who are listening, the gist of the song is how Canadians are generally, and it had nothing to do with this tariff thing. But the idea is just a little bit about how we think, how our environment makes us tough, it makes us humble, and we're generally nice people, but don't underestimate us. And whatever you do, don't attack us, because you're going to find out we're nice until we're not nice. And so the chorus is, we strive to keep the peace and live in harmony, but if you drop the gloves, friend, we will too. And so with this whole tariff thing happening, we're like, well, it's probably better to get it out sooner than later. People will be able to relate to it, even though it was never intended to apply to Americans who are our best friends. Like, what the heck's going on? I'm not going to get into the politics, but we love Americans, and this is crazy.
Yeah, I think it's important to visit that point, because when you initially sent me the lyrics, like 2 years ago now, I think, you even said, like, this is just about Canadian pride. It's who we are. It's what we are. And to that point, the verse that we ended up omitting from the final tune, it's all about like the landscape and the natural beauty of our country and just being proud of it and lucky to be here,
enjoying it.
Yeah. And I love the message of that verse, but as we ended up deciding, it didn't serve the song in the end, which is a hard call to make sometimes. I think it's important to remember the original message of the song, even though in our current climate, political climate, has potentially another meaning that wasn't its intended meaning. It's a Canadian pride, peacekeeping sort of song. And I think that's cool.
The verse we didn't include is landscapes sprawl beyond our eyes, mountains and a big blue sky, lakes nestled in boundless trees, autumn's multicolored leaves. Nature inspires us firsthand to be stewards to protect our land. It wasn't definitely not a fight back song, although it could be now. It was more of a, look, this is who we are and this is our lives and leave us to enjoy it. But in the process of all that, I remember, hey, Cameron, how's it going? And you call me on the way from, there's a bit of a drive between you teaching and you getting home.
Yep.
And so I kind of have this picture in my head. I can't help but ask about it. You said, yeah, I've got things pretty good. And I was asking if I needed, I was saying you can change the lyrics if you need to. You said, I don't really think I need to. I was running through it a bit. And I'm kind of thinking of how it's going to come across. Were you by any chance practicing on your way home in the drive? Like, were you thinking or singing when you were driving about what it would sound like? I just had this picture. You're going to hang up the phone and belt it out.
Nothing so concrete. It's definitely, it rattles around in my noggin when I'm driving. For reference, that drive, it was a Tuesday. I remember it very well because I have to do it every Tuesday. It's a long drive and it's right in rush hour traffic. Like, it's just a slog. So it gives me a lot of time to really mull stuff over and think through whatever I need to be thinking through at the time. And this was on the front burner. So I was thinking through because at this point we had decided we're going for the rock and roll. We're going for the arena vibe. And as you mentioned, you said, do you think you need to change the lyrics? And I really didn't think I did. With any art, you have to decide when it's done. And
right.
That's a lesson I'm still learning. Just as an aside, even my own material, sometimes I'll sit on it for years and years because it's never quite perfect. It's never quite there. And I've begun to get better at saying, you know what? It's never going to be perfect. This is where it is. And this is where I'm going to draw the line. It was a moment sort of like that, where it's these lyrics are great. I think we just need to take this verse out because it's not serving the song the way I'm hearing it in my head. But in terms of, do you need to change anything? No, because it had such a consistent meter, because it's sort of like a poem, it made it really easy to build around. The music kind of wrote itself around it. Honestly, the way it came to be was I read through the lyrics just aloud to myself a few different ways until I settled on the meter and the timing that felt natural, and then plunked guitars kind of around that, and the rest kind of filled in around itself. But no, I wouldn't say I was, steering wheel drumming and belting it out on the way home so much as just kind of mentally taking myself through the rhythms and the meter. And then when I got home, that was a different story. That's when the guitar came out and, start fleshing things out.
Well, it's amazing. And we're starting to run out of time, and we still want to talk a little bit about the process. So we want to hit some highlights there. Mm-hmm. But the one thing I wanted to say there too is I had no idea what it would sound like. And it definitely sounded different than whatever I might have imagined. Better, for sure. One thing I never expected, though, and this is what makes professional musician professional, was I just assumed everything would be the same throughout the song in terms of how you pronounce words and how you sing the different choruses and verses. But it just was really neat how you put personality in different lines. So you see a particular line in a verse, and instead of singing it exactly like you did the last verse, now there's a different personality when you're talking. And I just thought it was amazing to kind of feel the personality of the lines come out too.
I mean, part of that sure is the performance, but honestly, a lot of that is the material, the written material. So the example that comes to my mind is in the last verse there. Leave us to be kind and we'll get along just fine. The first few takes I did that, I just sort of sang it like you're saying, and it had a melody and it was cool. And it didn't feel right because it's almost cheeky, the way that line comes across.
Yeah, there's a little passive aggressive.
Almost, right? And so what I ended up doing was almost conversational. I kind of almost laughed in the line too, if you listen to it. Yeah, give it a little attitude, right? Kind of reflect the mood of each line. Again, that stuff, it's not necessarily a fully conscious decision like, oh, I see this word, I'm going to do it this way. It kind of comes through after running it a couple times and what the song needs. I keep coming back to this phrase. I learned it from Zach, who produced the song for us. He did the mixing and mastering for us. I learned this from him in the studio ages ago. You can come up with great ideas, but if it doesn't serve the song, it doesn't serve the song and it's not the best move. And it always comes back to that point. Does this cool thing I'm trying serve the song, or is it just a cool thing to try,
Well, that's what I felt like. I felt like kind of came out of you. And I think it has to do, we talk a lot about this in different contexts, where when you become really good at something, there's a long period where you have to learn the basics. You have to learn the moves. You have to learn the turns or whatever it happens to be, or the skills.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you have that knowledge, that's when the art can come out, because that's when you don't have to think about, okay, now I want to put attitude on it, so I have to inflect my voice a certain way. It's like you said, I can just imagine you doing that. You're singing the song and you just feel like doing it a certain way and it feels right, and that's where it lands.
Pretty much. Yeah, there is no secret to it. It's a beautiful moment of creativity. You just kind of, you do it one way, see if it works. If it doesn't, you try it another way. And when it's right, you'll know. It's pretty cool.
I'm obviously too excited about all this because we're burning through our time, but let's just hit a few highlights. So
sure.
It was hilarious because I'm like, hey Cam. And you're like, John, it's okay. Everything's good. And so for example, when you said, I've got a version of it, kind of a rough version. And I listened to it and thought, it's done. Like, this is perfect. Right? And you're like, John, I got to get Zach involved. Zach's going to master it. He's going to make some changes. That's going to be better.
Yeah.
Okay. How does that work? Well, he has to, first of all, have time in his schedule and the rest of it. And then when that's done, I will then, are you on SOCAN yet? So SOCAN is, you have to register as an artist so that you can put in, that you're the writer and get copyright protection and whatnot. No, I better do that. Right. And then I'm going to have to find a way to upload it to places like Apple Music and Spotify and the rest of it. Oh, how does that work? So it's a whole process, that you have to go through.
Yeah, it really is. And frankly, I was pretty impressed with our turnaround. Speaking of burning time, we set a pretty strict deadline and stuck to it. And thankfully, Zach had the time in his schedule to get it done. What a hero. Shout out again to Zach Gerber of Skytrack Studios. He turned it around in like 2 days.
Huge thank you.
Yeah, he nailed it. Including some studio magic. We jokingly call it quantum fixing. So there was some quantum fixing, but yeah, it was great. Really, really quick turnaround, because the idea was, again, even though the original message of the song wasn't a sort of combative fight back tune, given the political climate, namely the tariff threat at the time, we were trying to get the song out and ready for when that was supposed to land. And we pulled that off, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, just speaking briefly about that, I hope that there's a way through this without a big fight, but I don't understand how anybody, especially Americans, can't know that Canadians might be nice, but literally if you drop the gloves, all you had to do was watch that Four Nations Cup hockey game when the Americans had pre-planned to have some fights at the start of the game. It wasn't, Canadians weren't part of it. And 3 times in a row, they dropped the gloves. And so we did too. We weren't out there looking for a fight, but we're going to fight, especially if it's existential. People should know that they shouldn't mess with us because it's not going to end well. Historically, and the whole thing, by the way, where it came from was I had been reading books about Canadian war history. I've been reading them for decades. It's an interesting topic to me. And it's amazing how Canadians constantly punch over their weight, both as an army and as a country.
Yeah.
Like
it's a weird thing. I learned in high school, we are known as the international peacekeepers, but we're also known as pretty tough SOBs, Yeah, Germans did not want to be against Canadians in World War II. A whole bunch of examples. Another example of punching over a weight. We keep hearing about this trade deficit, right? Like, it's terrible. You're taking advantage of us. Trade deficit. It's like, wait a minute. This is ridiculous. We have 41 million people in Canada. You have 330 million people in the US. We're buying roughly the same from you as you buy from us, which means that, like, if you take it per capita, per Canadian, we're spending almost 7 or 8 times more than per capita the American. Like, we're the ones facing the trade deficit, and yet we're like happy to keep doing business because we understand we'll all make more money together. But I digress. So then, that's pretty cool. So once we did that, and then the other amazing turnaround was we were on the phone and you were saying, okay, I'm uploading this to the service that I use to get it onto these programs. So like you give the music, the distribution. Yeah. And I think you use CD Baby for that. We said there was like some smallish fee to do it a little quicker, which we used. Oh yeah.
And it was unbelievable how fast it all of a sudden appeared on these different places.
I was genuinely surprised by that too. Cause I've seen that service before, that sort of fast track service, but I've never needed it. And so because we had this short time frame, I was like, do you want to, throw the extra $20 or whatever at this? It's like, yeah, let's do it. And yeah, they had it distributed within like a day and a half.
It was crazy. And now we had we had said, well, don't release it until a certain day, just thinking we thought that was overly aggressive.
Yeah.
It turned out we were waiting for it to pop up.
Yeah. They got it going real fast for us. It was good.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to have to skip the question we ask every guest because of the time. So hopefully we'll get past that. But Cam, I just want to say thanks, like a real sincere thanks. It's, for somebody who started off just wanting to tinker as if I drew a painting when I can't paint.
Yeah.
Thinking, well, it'll never be seen, to actually see some words I was tinkering and turn into something real. And so the music you did was so amazing. I just really appreciate it. And I got a lot of gratitude to you for what you've done. Well,
it's my pleasure. It was a fun collaboration, and I'm happy to use my skills to help bring more art into the world. That's what I'm here for.
Okay, so everybody listen to True North Frame of Mind and tell your friends about it. And that's the story of how it came to life.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy it.
We're polite, but we're not meek. It's reckless to assume we're weak. Anytime we face attack, we're gonna have each other's backs. Leave us to be kind, and we'll get along just fine. We strive to keep the peace, to live in harmony. But if you drop the gloves, friend, we will too.
We hope you're enjoying the show, and we hope you're finding ways to foster wellness in the categories that are important to you. If you like what you're hearing, head to our website, letsbewelltogether.com, and then to the archives page. It includes a quick summary of the different segments of all of our shows back to the start. Have a look and see if there's something interesting you want to listen to, and listen to one of our past episodes.
Move that body like we're meant to do. Okay, so we're all out there moving our bodies and doing exercise and shoveling the snow and getting busy. But what do you do when you don't feel good? I have some natural suggestions that I thought would be really awesome to talk about.
All right.
Because, take a Tylenol if you have a headache, or, if you're not feeling well, or sleep if you're tired. But there are some foods that can help you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And we've often talked about how, in my mind, nutrition is inextricably linked to move that body.
I agree.
Because what you put in is really, really important, almost as important as how you move.
Yeah, it's the fuel, right? And it can, if you have bad fuel, it'll not digest very well, and it won't help you move that body, and it'll make you sluggish. And definitely food is so important.
So you got some foods that have like magic effects?
Yeah. So if you're feeling tired, you should eat a banana. I thought that was a really great one. If you have poor digestion, try ginger. Low immunity, oranges. Skin problems, cucumbers. Weak bones, kale. Now, if I was thinking weak bones, I would think calcium, like milk or something, but kale, I guess, helps. Trouble focusing, have a walnut. Heart health, avocados. Muscle cramps, beets. Diabetes, pumpkin seeds. Weak lungs, tomatoes. Memory boost, blueberries. Liver detox, broccoli. Eye health, carrots. Hydration, watermelon. Blood pressure, garlic. Poor sleep, kiwi. Bloating, pineapple. And weak hair, almonds. What do you think?
All this says to me, it's really interesting. Like, I don't know if those are right. I assume they're all right. But what it tells me is, wow, like, I don't think I would take it like a pill. Like, I don't think I'd be like, oh, my eyesights are bad. If I eat a carrot, it'll be better. But except for maybe ginger. I have heard like a ginger tea if you're an upset stomach.
Yes.
But what I think is really fascinating about that is just nutrition is so important. And I'm more focused on things like, okay, I got to make sure I get protein and carbs.
Yes.
And fatty foods like oil and vegetables. But I don't really bore down into which particular ones are good to have, which ones are kind of higher in vitamins. Like, I know generally colored vegetables are nice, different vitamins.
Yep. The more color, the better. Like some of these just really surprised me. I mean, watermelon, obviously for hydration, I mean, it's pretty much all water anyways, right? So some of them are quite logical.
Yeah, but watermelon, ugh.
I love watermelon.
I don't like watermelon. I know you like it. I don't like it.
But like garlic, blood pressure,
Yeah,
I didn't know that. And a lot of these things you can just add to your protein or add to your stir fry just to even add the flavor, but it helps with all these little other things that you didn't think about. So I think that's really awesome.
The way my mind works, the way kind of I approach things, yeah, that's what I would do. Like I would thinking, okay, well, I want to make sure I eat the right combination of proteins and carbs and fatty foods and all starchy foods, all that stuff. But maybe now I should start looking into what foods have good nutrients and vitamins.
Yeah.
What foods have a good impact on my body, and try and make sure I'm getting a nice supply throughout the week.
A nice balance. Yes.
Yeah. So say, hey, are we eating like walnuts? I like that.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to keep this. So these are the superfoods. They're type of superfoods. So I'm going to keep this list. So when I am making my stir fries, I'm not just going to do okay, what's the protein? What's the starch? What's the veg? I'm going to be like, what else can I add? Not just for flavor, but for health.
Yeah. And it all starts at the grocery store.
Yeah.
You have to bring your list to the grocery store and be like, you know what?
True.
I'm going to make sure that once or twice a week, I have a couple of these in it. You know, tomatoes one time, carrots another time, or maybe both, or some walnuts instead of almonds. And yeah, I like the idea of trying to learn more about this. And I'm sure that I can do internet searches and whatnot and learn more about all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So
love it.
You want balance, but you also want these superfoods. Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It's sign-off time. It's John here with Sheila.
It's I.
On the last sign-off, I said I was glad to be back in the office. What I forgot to say was that it's because I'd been sick and I'd been at home for a few weeks.
Yes.
And again, this past week, I was in the office a few days, which was great. Sheila and I also got to go up to Owen Sound and see Michael. I would work from the Elise's office up there and see Michael when I could. And at night, that was fantastic. And I had a really good breakthrough last week. I've been working on my whole theory, the approach to wellness, and things work pretty well, I think. I think I can explain it well. I've had a few things in my mind, and I was trying to figure out a way to articulate them. And I came up with it because I thought of the idea of a strategic plan. And these concepts are like strategic plan ideas. And so it's kind of cool. So I'm kind of tinkering with my presentation and adding that to it. It made me feel really good. So I had a great week. How about you, Sheila?
I had a great week. The weather was lovely. The snow is starting to disappear. So that is exciting. Like I think spring is starting to come. Number one. Number two, it was great to see Michael, of course, and Elise and Stephen and get up there. And it was nice because you were there. So I got to spend time with you and them. And that was wonderful. And we had a fabulous celebration. My brother celebrated 65 and my other brother was 60. So they did a little walkabout and it was St. Paddy's theme because it is St. Paddy's Day this week. And that was so much fun. And it was pretty rainy this weekend, but we actually were walking from one house to the other house and then spending some time there and then walking from one house to the other house. And we didn't get caught in the rain. So it was really fun and a great get together with quite a few people. So I really enjoyed that just to end up the week.
Yeah, we nailed the social.
Nailed the social.
Okay, well, we hope you enjoyed this show and we will see you again next week.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.